to see you. It's really, it really is. No, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It takes some adjusting. You can sit wherever you want. Wherever you want. Wherever you want. Wherever you want. All right, so it never works.
Sorry,
We'll manage. Don't worry. That's funny. That is a tricky thing, though, right? What happens? Like, if you forget something like that, how do you do?
my first ever musical that I was in, I played Lethal.
Was she one of the kids?
She's the oldest daughter.
Lauren, do me a favor.
Nervous.
Sing something with Keelan. Could you play something together with Lauren for a second? I just want to make sure I'm hearing. Of all the things that the Rabbi Cantor checked before services, you'd never think you'd have to take your AirPods out. Open up your phone. Susie, how was work? I missed you. It's not the same without you. I know. Right, there's no drama. No drama. No drama. It's a no drama Friday. I'm sure. Well, we miss you too. And not that I expect that you would ever want to actually sit down and watch a video of it, but you are welcome at any time. I know that's the thing. Well, if it ever works out, you come, But we had very robust discussion today. It was good stuff. It was just me and Philip and Bonnie and Ann Silver who just joined actually for the first time. So that's nice. Nice cross section of stuff. So it's fun. No. I actually went back and watched the video of the last class that we had, which was like 4 months ago, and just so that I could remember where we left off. And it took us probably 45 minutes before we actually got to what I was intending on, just sort of catching ourselves up. But it was fun. It was good stuff. Well, like I said, situation happens. You get a Friday off. You are welcome back anytime, for sure. All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good to see you. Shabbat Shalom, Cantor Lauren.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Keelan.
Hi.
How are we feeling? Good. So we're gonna get started. Except I realized I left my kippah in the other room. So Cantor, I'm gonna light the candles. You bless the candles, and I will be right back with a gum.
Sounds great.
Okay. Blessings are on page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kirshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We'll turn to page 128.
Shalom, everybody. Mike, I know you just sat down. Could you do me a huge favor? Could you just ask Josie or Bob to close the door? Oh, Marsha's on. Mike is on. The M's are on it. We got it covered. See, this is that kind of congregation we got. People just running to help. It's great. Yeah, I know. But the one great thing about a sanctuary such as this is that it was designed before microphones. So the idea of it is that it carries sound really far. So if any of you have been thinking you're getting away with having small conversations with each other, let me tell you, in an empty-ish space, you can hear every word. So tell the rabbi how wonderful his sermon is. No, I'm kidding. Don't feel self-conscious about it. Just the outside thing, for whatever reason, it creates sound. Anyway, we're going to turn to page 130 as we begin Kabbalat Shabbat together at the very top of the page. Turn now to page 131, Shiru Ladonai, in the middle of the page. Turn now to page 132 at the very bottom of the page, or Zarua. page 134, Zamru Adonai at the very top of the page. We're now on page 135, Romamu, the last Hebrew paragraph in the middle of the page. Turn to L'chadodi now on page 138. A reminder, we'll do the first, second, fifth, and ninth paragraphs, and for the last one, we'll rise in body or spirit, and we'll face towards the door that we entered through at the back. Again, page 138.
מנחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה בואי חלה. לך אדוני, לך אדוני לקראת כלה, בני שבת נתעלה. לך אדוני לקראת כלה, בני שבת נתעלה.
Okay, please be seated. We're on page 140, Psalm 92.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב מאוד לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב מאוד לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, באמונתך בלילות, עלי יסוד ועלי דבר, עלי היגיון בחידון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון. צדיק אתה מרי פרח, כארז בלבנון ישנא, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובו משיבה, דשני ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי אשר אדוני צורי, מלוא הבלתמו.
Turn to page 144 for the Chatzi Kaddish.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה,
אמן.
יעמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ויאמרו אמן. ישמי רבה מברך, לעולם ימי עלמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח, יתפאר ויתרומם וינשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו, לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירה בעלמה, ויאמרו
Amen. We now rise in body or spirit for the Baruch Hu on page 146.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Marechu et Adonai, Amevon.
please be seated. Let's turn together to page 148, and we'll read in English at the bottom of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzvaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evil.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב הרבים.
Turn to page 150.
אהבת עולם, בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, עמך אהבת. תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים, אותנו למדת, אותנו למדת. על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו, ובוקנו נשיח בחוקיך, ונשמח בדברי תורתך, ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד, כי הם חיינו לאורך ימינו, ובהם נגי יומם ולילה, נגי יומם ולילה. מעברך אל תסיר, ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. אוהב עמו ישראל.
We'll turn now to page 152 for the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
We're on page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך ובביתך ולכתך בדרך ובשוכבך וקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם אלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם emet. Let's read together on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together. As we turn to page 158. Turn now to page 161 or 160. Which? We'll follow you. 161 or 160, whichever.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.
Turn now to page 162. Invite us all now to rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 164 to begin the Amidah together, and then we'll continue silently. Please go at your own pace, and when you're finished, you may be seated. turn now to page 371 as we offer our Misha Berach. Certainly we'll invite those at home to think of their loved ones. We'll begin by thinking on our end of those in our community and connected to our community in need of healing. Tonight we're thinking of Glenn Tinney, Tzipora Ahava, Gittel Bat Shmuel Aviva, Gerald Hirsch, Oren Nachum, Bruce Steger, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Jeff Baker, David Tosher, Jim Cohn, Monique Banks Rathbun, Lindsay Epstein, Dolores Michka, Sylvia Orn, Yerachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Chauhan, Samuel Moskowitz, Chaim Leib, Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollack, Jane London, Catherine Guarino, Amna Chava, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Raz Brody, Chana Ruth Bat Sarah, Fagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idol Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem Ben Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kasov, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Sivia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Leah, and Justin Banner. And for those that are here with us tonight, we'll start on this side of the room and work to the back. And if you have any names to share, please just raise a hand so we acknowledge everyone. We'll join together with the cantor on page 371 in the middle of the page as we sing our Misha Berach. Thank you, Cantor. Thank you, Keelan. You guys can take a little bit of a break. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So I'm hoping perhaps that some were listening to my sermons over the holidays. I won't make any assumptions, but hopefully at least a little bit here or there. One of my high holiday sermons this year was about the historical challenge, the present day challenge of a decision that was made a long time ago by the rabbis to increasingly limit the ability for women to participate actively in prayer in particular, on an equal plane to men. And while we may think again that we are talking in the past tense, right, talking in a piece of history, the reality is that it's still a challenge to this day, and in particular a challenge in the state of Israel. Now, I know not everybody is going to be reading Israeli newspapers every day as I tend to. I don't expect that, although it would be a lovely thing. You actually have many wonderful English choices to consider. But there was an incident within the Knesset that is part of a larger conversation that I wanted to draw our attention to, mostly because I knew it probably was a blip on the radar that many people might have missed outside of Israel, and even within Israel probably might have missed as well. Just backing up a little bit for context, we may remember a few years ago, we welcomed, actually it wasn't a few years ago, it was last summer. We welcomed by Zoom representatives of Women of the Wall, Mashota Kotel. And in particular, the executive director, Anat Hoffman, who spoke to us at great length, taught us some beautiful Torah, and told us about this organization, which has existed now for decades, that is non-denominational, draws from women across the religious spectrum in Israel, and that amongst many other activities is known for every Rosh Chodesh going to the Western Wall, going to the Kotel, and attempting to pray as one is meant to pray in the morning on Rosh Chodesh, which is to bring a Torah scroll and to read from the Torah the appropriate sections that are to be read. Now, for those of you that have not been to Israel, not been to the Kotel, and looking around the room, my guess is that's not many of you, but some of you, right? To imagine the Kotel again as being a very large sort of a square, an open space with the Western Wall in front. And while before the State of Israel was created again in 1948, the early 1900s, there were still some Jews living in pre-state Palestine, Mandate Palestine, who were able to go to the Kotel and prayed, and there was no division of men and women, it just simply was. But as the State of Israel was founded, and in particular after 1967, and Jerusalem was ultimately taken back, at that point, the responsibility of overseeing the entire Kotel was given exclusively to the Orthodox, and in particular to a creation of something that is called the Western Wall Heritage Foundation, which has a tremendous amount of power and influence, and to a chief rabbi who is overseeing the Western Wall. And so for decades now, the women have come to the wall on Rosh Chodesh and have been met with both verbal and much more recently, in intensifying fashion, physical altercations. People, generally actually young students in yeshivot, who are brought in to confront them, to yell at them, in some cases really quite horribly, to throw feces at them, and ultimately to attack people who are holding Torahs, Sidurim, etc. So as predictable, this happened again this week, as we were talking about last week and talking about Rosh Chodesh beginning. This week earlier, I believe it was on Thursday, and this might have been last week, and maybe I'm just missing my timing, but I believe it was this week. There was another such incident, and I want to talk about sort of what happened after the fact, because the incident unfortunately has become predictable. But what has changed to some degree is what's going on in Knesset, in Parliament, in Yerushalayim as we speak, because the government itself is made up of a different group of people than has been in power for most of the last decade plus. One of those people happens to be, by extension, one of ours. It was a member of Knesset whose name is Rabbi Gilad Kariv. Just out of curiosity, does that name ring out to anybody? Okay, you will be knowing more about Rabbi Kariv for sure. He's a remarkable person. I met him a few times. I once, don't tell anybody, although it's on camera, we had helped him have a clandestine meeting in the basement of the shul on one weekend because he was out here for reasons I did not know at the time, which I now surmise was his plan to run for a position in the government as a member of Knesset. And he was, for the time before entering Knesset, was the head of the equivalent of RURJ, right, the reform movement in Israel. And so not only is he a part of the government, he is also the ruling head of, I have to write it down here, one of the very significant committees that is part of the government. It's called the Law and Justice Committee, Constitution, Law and Justice Committee, in which you can already surmise the significance of this committee's work. So as they began their work on Thursday, another member of Knesset named Meir Porush, who represents, as part of the UTJ, the United Torah Judaism, which is a sort of basket political organization that really reflects Ashkenazi Orthodox Jewry in Israel, has been a part of the government for most of the last decade and a half, and is now part of the opposition. And again, represents the ultra-Orthodox community. And he himself has been in politics for many, many years. And he decided, as a means of protesting something that had taken place at the wall, which I'll explain in a second, he came into the committee meeting, he sat himself down in the corner, and he began very, very loudly reciting Psalms over and over and over again from the book of Psalms. So what was it that he was protesting? He was protesting Representative Rabbi Kariv, in particular because what happens is when the women go to the wall, they're not allowed to carry a Torah in themselves because there is a law that basically says at the moment that the only Torahs that can be used are ones that are given by the Western Wall Foundation and by their chief rabbi, etc. So what that means is that they are generally only used to be used by the men's side of the mechitza, right, the men's side of the prayer area, and also by those, generally speaking, that only are representative of the Orthodox strains of Judaism. So what happens is, generally speaking, if a woman tries to bring the Torah in themselves directly, the Torahs are taken away, and in some cases they are even arrested for violating a law. And what happened in the case of Rabbi Kariv, and it's the second time he's done it recently, and others have done it as well, is that he, as a member of Knesset, has immunity. So he was able to bring the Torah in and essentially hand off to the women of the wall so that they would be able then to run the service inside of the mechitza, inside the women's section of the women of the wall. So Meir Porush, a member of Knesset, comes in, and his form of protest is to sit down and, as I said, to interrupt the meeting by reciting songs. So you might think, of course, this is going to lead to some gigantic fracas and people start throwing things at each other. But Rabbi Kariv had a really, remarkable response in a number of different ways. So I'll try as best as I can. The whole video is online. If you speak Hebrew, you can hear it in its original form, and it's really quite remarkable because you can hear the tone and the calmness of his voice in response. But his response was as follows. He says, "We respect the right of Meir Porush to protest. So we'll take a break so that he can complete his reading of the Psalms." And why is this the case? Because he says, "I was at the Western Wall this morning, and I am glad that other Knesset members are exercising their right to protest." So what's lost in this is a certain amount of quiet sarcasm, right, on the part of, right, if you don't know Hebrew well enough, you can't quite hear it without hearing the tone. But he also does kind of mean it, right? In other words, that just as he had the right to do what he felt was important and to protest in the way that he needed to, technically speaking, the MK, right, is able to do that, even though he ultimately is going to be removed. So that's the first part of this. But the second part of it, which I thought was also remarkable, is he continues on. He says, basically to calm everybody in the room, the committee's walls did not fall down, and at least we received a few chapters of Psalms out of this, right? Again, making light. But he also then went on to give a Devar Torah, right? So he responded to an attempt to sort of own the Torah, own the tradition, right, by the Orthodox member of Knesset, in a particular way to sort of hold it over the Reform rabbi, right? So what does a Reform rabbi do? He responds with words of Torah, and he points out that there is a section in Sechet Yoma, if I remember correctly, in which there's a conversation about what's called Chilul Hashem, what is a violation of God's name. And he pointed out that what the Porush is doing is actually counterintuitive, because what it does is it off-puts the rest of Judaism to his way of Judaism, right? If this is the way that he's going to behave and his compatriots are going to behave, that the rest of the Jewish world, Reform, conservative, secular, otherwise, are going to look upon this man's behavior and the behavior of his contemporaries with contempt. And it will do nothing to support his perspective, presumably, which is to honor the Torah. And his idea, basically, Kariv's Devar Torah, was to say that really what's happening actually is a Chilul Hashem, right? Is a violation of, is an affront to God, not the opposite. So that in itself was quite remarkable, but there is also a sort of larger context here to understand that this is not just an interplay between two people in a room. So in other related circumstances, Anat Hoffman was on the radio, was interviewed in two different instances in which she was treated in a really horrible fashion. One of which was in an interview with Porush himself on the radio, in which Porush didn't even acknowledge her. When they were talking, it wasn't a debate. He refused to even acknowledge her existence, claiming that he does not converse with those who are, quote, reform or conservative. Okay, so this is a member of Knesset in the state of Israel who won't even acknowledge a person's existence because they are not of the stream of Judaism that they practice. Okay, so problem number one. He was then also, Anat was on another interview with I-24, which is a channel actually that you can get here, if I'm not mistaken. I think you can watch it, and that it's oftentimes broadcast in English. And so in this case, Rabbi Halbertal, who was a representative of the, as I said, the Kotel Heritage Foundation, which itself carries great sway, and he said that the following, which is really unbelievable. He said, so Rabbi Gilad Kariv is a criminal for bringing a Torah scroll into the Kotel for women to read, which, again, technically would be correct if he was not a member of Knesset with immunity. Okay, but second to that, he included as well, quote, that the women of the wall should fear violence because they are a minority at the Kotel. Should fear violence, okay? A representative of the organization that is partially responsible for overseeing what is considered to be the most sacred place in all of Israel is telling women to fear violence when they come to pray. if this doesn't make us concerned, if not entirely upset, then I think we need to check our pulse a little bit. But lest it all be doom and gloom, I want to point out the other voices that are speaking out against within the walls of Knesset. So two people who I think said things that were really important to hear. One is a number member of Knesset. His name is Alon Tal. He represents the Blue and White Coalition as part of the larger coalition. And he says, I have 3 daughters, all of whom served in combat units in the IDF. And he said, I have never worried for them as much as I did when they joined the women of the wall at the Kotel. Let's just think about that for a moment. Okay, we all can understand there's a certain amount of rhetoric involved in this. But I think he's really being truthful. And that's a really devastating statement to make, right? To say that we are more concerned about his daughters going to the Kotel to pray than they are fighting on the front lines. And I'll say one other piece, though, that I thought was really heartening. This comes from another member of Knesset, Mozi Raz, who is from Meretz. And he said, and he turned to his colleagues on the Orthodox side of the Knesset, and he said to them that you will see that a time is coming when women will pray at the Kotel the same way that you see women voting. Okay? And the reason that I emphasize this is because there is always going to be a tension in Israel between the religious, the not religious, and all of us in between. There's going to be a tension between Israeli Jewry and American Jewry and diaspora Jewry. These tensions will exist, and they in and of themselves are not problematic unless we allow them to pass us by without having a say in what's going on, and without being aware of what's going on. And as I surmise, just from looking, right, that this is probably news to each and every one of you. And that's the challenge of it, right, that this is so sort of buried in the news that I wouldn't have seen it even, and I read the Israeli papers every day. I wouldn't have seen it had I not also been a Facebook follower of the Women of the Wall. And had I not seen the pictures that were posted, if I had not read the articles that then resulted from it, I would have had no idea that this was going on. And yet this is fundamental to what I was talking about on Yom Kippur, and what I think each of us has to commit to is an understanding that we are also a part of this conversation. Okay? That this is us as much as it is them, and all together. And we have to figure out some way for us to break out of this mentality that there is any one group of Jews who controls Judaism for the rest of us. And I think back to this week's Torah portion, because this week is really where we are connected to the land of Israel for the first time. This portion is Lech Lecha. This is where we are told by God, right? Abraham is told, get up and take yourself over to this place that I'm going to show you. Now the key distinction is when we get to those verses, okay, when we get to those verses, it doesn't say, right, just you and your people will be in this land. Okay, God says, right, that you're going to go forward, you're going to go to this place, and this is going to be the land. God says to Abraham, right, to Avram at this point, I will sign this land to your offspring. Okay, L'chol zarecha. Okay, it doesn't say to only the males of your lineage. It does not say anything about that. Right, the heritage of the state of Israel belongs to every Jewish person, every single Jewish person. And if in our most sacred space, okay, however we feel about the Kotel and however we feel about the temple, all those kinds of things, one will understand and acknowledge the fact that the Kotel is symbolically the central home of our spirituality. If that is not a safe space, and if literally that is a space where violence takes place, we have to ask ourselves if our heart has been corrupted and what it is that we are responsible for to disentangle it. Okay, we do have a voice. We don't live in Israel necessarily, except for the Brombergs who are going home in a little bit. Okay, we don't have the same effect necessarily from here, but our voices matter. Our support, for example, of Women of the Wall matters. So this is a time, right? I know that there was some engagement when they came to speak, and my guess is that that dropped off as time went by. This is a time to re-engage. And this is a time to reach out to them and to say, what can I do to help? How can I get involved? How can I spread the word about what you are doing? How can we fight for that kind of egalitarian equality at the wall? How can we make this work? And it's not to take away from the Orthodox. It's not to remove one paradigm and replace it with another. It's to help us to do what we've actually done very well historically, which is to figure out the various ways in which for us to experience Judaism and to share that experience together. And as most of you know, I hope all of you know, right, Israel is very deep in my heart, as I'm sure it is for many of you. And when it's hurting, I'm hurting. And when I think about friends of mine who are regularly at, right? And my guess is, Minna's at this not so, pretty often as it goes, right? People that are connected to our community here in Sag Harbor, who are there getting things thrown at them, getting things yelled at them by children that are at the direction of their rabbis. There is something really heartbreaking about it, but I don't want us to be heartbroken. I want us to be inspired, right? I want us to take charge, to take control over what is part of our heritage, to really understand what it is that's being said in Lech Lecha, that even if we don't live there, even if we are not citizens there, even if we do not serve in the army there or pay taxes there, it is the homeland of the Jewish people, and Jerusalem is the center of our spiritual identity. And we cannot abdicate responsibility to it to others simply because we are not there. Each of us has a role to play, each of us has something to do. And I would like to see very much for a greater engagement from all of us, from our community, and as soon as we can get back to Israel, to do it there as well. So I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. And again, if there's plenty of details about this entire thing, including, again, videos of what took place. Not to lose, again, sight of how Rabbi Kariv handled things. Just a remarkable thing, right? Could easily have led to violence, to screaming, to yelling, and instead responded with Torah, words of Torah. That is the most powerful way to change. That is the most powerful way to change minds. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and I'll welcome the cantor back up to the bima. We'll rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 586, at the very bottom of the page, Aleinu L'Shabeach. Aleinu L'Shabeach L'Adon HaKol, Latet Kedula L'Yotzer Breshit, Shelo Asanu Kegoye HaRatzot, Velo Samanu Kemishmechot Adama, Shelo Sam Chelkenu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu Kechol Hamonam, Vanahapnu Korim Umishtachavim Umodim, Lifnei Mehelech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're now on page 591. V'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. I invite those in mourning and those observing yahrzeit to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We think first of those who passed in our community in recent months. Sylvia Alderman, Morris Dickstein, Fred Eber, Sandra Furman, Evelyn Gelb, Arthur Grossman, Elaine Grossman, Jeanette Kopp, William Lipman, Audrey Lubo, Morty Lynn, Jerry Monroe, Harry Olstein, Danielle Lisa Rigg, Geraldine Rosen, Harriet Roth, Jeannie Rubin, Howard Schreier, Dorothy Shupnick, Paul Silver, Marlise Silverberg, Blanche Sklar, Rita Sandra Snyder, Joan Strong Tangzilius, Virginia Tizer, and Ann Weiss. We also mark the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Ruth Abel, Beatrice Alexander, Mordechai Bergman, Lillian Bernstein, Lon Best, Mordechai Bayman, Ephraim Cherish, Sylvia Daniels, Robert Father, Hermit Feinstein, Kenneth Gladstone, Joseph Goldstein, Robert Green, Harry Hanser, Jeannie Judge, Esther Katz, Faye Lester, Lillian Marks, Philip Miller, Ruth Oglensky, Morris Rubin, Meyer Rudnick, Joseph Benjamin Shockett, Miriam Slater, Carol Clark Tatcon, Norton Tyson, M.J. Weinberg, and Florence Weiss. Does anyone else have a name of someone for whom you're saying Kaddish that you'd like to share? In solidarity with all their loved ones, those remembering their loved ones, let us rise as the mourners join in saying the Kaddish together on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach cherutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael. V'agalav izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabah mevarach le'alam le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitalev v'yithalal shemei d'kudsha b'richu. Le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata, the amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shalama rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Amen.
Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing.
Amen.
Please be seated, everyone. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. So before I read my announcements, just two quick things. One is to wish a Nisiya Tova to the Brombergs, right? You're leaving, we won't see you for another Shabbat. 2 more weeks. Okay, I'm going to keep saying goodbye to you until then because it's hard to say goodbye, for sure. I also want to just make a special acknowledgement of it's how wonderful it is to see the Partridge with us tonight. So Joyce and Peter, we're really happy to have you guys here, and I know your buddies right in front of you are very happy to see you as well, but it really is a treat to have you, and it's just wonderful to see you, really, both of you. So a few other announcements. Please join us for Shabbat services tomorrow that begin at 9:30. If you're joining us in person, the entrance will be on the side of the building here, and follow the signs for the chapel. You can also join us on our website, YouTube channel, or Facebook page. Please also join us for a Torah study on Zoom at 12 o'clock. A reminder also, this Sunday at 10 a.m., the Teen Group and the Social Justice Committee will be gleaning at local farms for the food pantry. If you're interested in joining and are able to join, please contact Shelley for more information. Also, you can check out our Social Justice Committee's Facebook page. So if you don't know that exists, that's a great thing. It's a great resource. You should check it out. It's sort of like a side page to our main Facebook page. But it's a great opportunity to, again, do really good work and to follow some biblical commandments at the same time. So it's a doubly great thing. So again, that'll be this Sunday at 10 o'clock. But there are some detailed instructions of the where and the how. So if you're interested and you don't know any of the wheres of the hows, please let me know and I'll do my best to help direct you. Also, a reminder, later in the afternoon, the Women's Rosh Chodesh group will be meeting at 4:30 on Zoom. A reminder, this week, Monday, Nina Mitzvah will be meeting at 11:30. Hebrew School is at 3:30. And I believe there is no Social Justice Committee meeting this week. Is that correct? I think so. On Tuesday at 1:30, the Social Justice Committee has arranged for a private curator-led 45-minute walking tour of Sylvester Manor on Shelter Island. You do need to register ahead of time because there is limited capacity, so just check for that on our website. Also a reminder, my classes are back in session. My Heschel class on Wednesdays at 12 o'clock, and my class on the Siddur, on the prayer book, at 9:15 on Friday mornings. Also, we have a Maureen's Haven sandwich and supply drop-off day, which begins on Friday, October 22nd. Again, all the information for that is on our website as well. And also, just a reminder, a little bit later in the month, we have a Zoom talk with Bina Bernard on her most recent book, Keeping Secrets, which will be on Zoom October 24th at 7 p.m. as well. So I think that those were all of my announcements. Also, just a reminder again, anybody who would be interested in Rabbi Minna Bromberg's Fat Torah teachings and yeshiva, that's more information that Margaret will have for you. Anybody who wants to sign up, please, or if you know anybody who might be interested in, please do find Margaret at the very end. And I think those are all of my announcements. Did I miss anything, anyone? Anything I know? Just a reminder again, as always, if you can bring your prayer books back at the end of the service to help Bob and Josie out, that would be great. And Cantor, we have a closing song, an apropos closing song for this evening, I believe, and then we'll do Kiddush. So we'll turn over to you.
You can find the words on page 645 in honor of this week's Torah portion. Again, it's on page 645.
Not know.
rise in body or spirit for Kiddush on page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shavat kodsho b'ahava u'vratzon inchilanu zikaron lema'aseh bereishit ki hu yom techila lemikrae kodesh Zecher letziat Mitzrayim, ki v'hanu v'acharta, ve'otanu kidashta, mikol ha'amim, ve'shabat kodshecha, ve'ahava u'ratzon inchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen.
L'chaim.
L'chaim to all of you. Shabbat Shalom to all of you. And again, thank you for being here and for bringing your Sidurim to the back. Bob and Joe, do you want to use... Joyce, would you want to go through the elevator?
I won't be here for the next few weeks. You after that, and then Aaron will be here.
Boyfriend Aaron?
Yeah. So we're gonna
Singing?
What?
Singing or being a rabbi?
He'll be so in 2 weeks we'll go over.
Oh,
Yeah, and he's gonna
why can't I hear that?
he's gonna help.
Can't wait.
Great. Oh, really?
I will take it down, just in case
Yeah.
you need one, there's all sorts of things in the attic.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's actually great because I have to bring this guitar back with me to school.
Take a look at this, and if it's something you want to keep out here, that works too.
Sorry? No, this belongs to me, but I'm giving service to the school next week, so I'll have to go. I don't really enjoy playing it.
I've seen this one in a while, but I will bring it down.
Okay, yeah.